Welcome to Sleepy Stories, where silence speaks and darkness tells the truth. Today, we're going to talk about this story, a story that feels quiet, but never truly safe. These are real-based stories, told slowly, softly, to calm your mind while unsettling your thoughts. So lower the lights, get comfortable, and let Sleepy Stories carry you into the dark. The Entity in the Pines, a real-based American horror case. Part 1, The Land That Was Never Empty. In Aroostook County, Maine, there are miles of forest where self-service disappears without warning. No mountains, no dramatic cliffs, just endless pines, dirt roads, and silence that feels heavier the longer you stand in it. Locals don't call it wilderness. They call it unclaimed. Not because nobody owns the land, but because nothing ever truly leaves it. The first rule of the Pines. If you grow up in northern Maine, there are rules you learn early. Don't follow voices in the woods. Don't answer your name if you're alone. Don't assume silence means safety. And most important, if the forest starts reacting to you, leave immediately. That rule exists for a reason. The 911 call, official record, 2008. On October 17th, 2008, at 11:43 p.m., Maine State Police received a 911 call from a man named Caleb Warden, age 34. Caleb was a wildlife survey contractor working near an abandoned logging route known locally as Pine Ridge Access Road. The call lasted 2 minutes and 11 seconds. The transcript is still archived. Caleb's voice was controlled. Calm, not panicked. That's what unsettled dispatch. "I'm not lost," he said. "I just can't tell where I'm standing anymore." The dispatcher asked him to describe his surroundings. Caleb paused, then said, "It's standing where the trees should be." When search teams arrived, search and rescue reached Caleb's last GPS ping within 47 minutes. His truck was parked properly on the roadside, engine cold, doors unlocked. His equipment bag was inside. Caleb himself was found 4 miles away, standing barefoot in a marsh clearing, alive, uninjured, but he refused to look behind him. When asked why, he said, "If I acknowledge the outline, it gets closer." What he described. Over the next 72 hours, Caleb was interviewed by state police, a forest ranger, or a psychologist assigned by the county. His story never changed. He said the forest didn't produce a creature. It produced a shape that learned him. Not an animal, not human, something that mimics space. He described it as a vertical absence that displays trees without breaking them. The psychologist asked if it had a face. Caleb answered, "It doesn't need one. It reflects whoever notices it first." The detail that made investigators stop. Caleb didn't claim it chased him. He said it waited. Every time he stopped moving, the forest went quiet. No birds, no wind, no insects. And then, "I felt like my thoughts weren't private anymore." That sentence appears verbatim in the interview file. The older cases. After Caleb's report, an internal review was triggered. Not public, not media-facing. A ranger named Ellen Rowe flagged something disturbing. There were at least 19 similar reports going back to 1971. Different decades, different people, same descriptions. Total negative space, forest reacting to awareness, loss of direction without movement, compulsion to stand still. None of the cases were classified as attacks, because nothing physical happened, except one thing: the ones who didn't come back. Between 1971 and 2005, 6 people disappeared within a 12-mile radius of Pine Ridge Access Road. All experienced outdoorsmen, all left behind equipment, all last seen standing still according to tracking dogs. So each dog consistently refused to enter a specific section of forest. Handlers reported whining, freezing, and retreat behavior. No remains were ever found. What locals say, off the record. Ask locals about Pine Ridge and they won't mention monsters. They'll mention manners. You don't stare at the trees like they owe you something. You walk like you're passing through someone else's kitchen. One old logger summarized it best. "That thing ain't hunting. It's sorting." The entity theory, not supernatural, official term. The task force never used the word entity. They called it an environmental intelligence anomaly, something that doesn't pursue bodies. It observes attention, awareness, presence. The more you notice it, the more defined it becomes. Caleb's last statement. Before being released, Caleb requested one thing. He asked that his name never be publicly linked to the forest. His final written statement reads, "It didn't want me dead. It wanted me to stop being separate." Caleb resigned from field work 3 months later. He moved to Arizona. He never entered a forest again. Why this case is still classified. No physical evidence. No violence. No law broken. Just consistency across decades. And one conclusion no one was willing to publish. Some environment behaved like observers, not locations. Part 2. The warnings that came first to people who were already there. Long before surveyors, loggers, or satellite maps reached northern Maine, the land around Pine Ridge belonged to the Wabanaki Confederacy. They didn't map the forest the way settlers did. They named behaviors, not places. And one name appears repeatedly in oral histories recorded in the late 1800s. The one that stands when you stop. It wasn't described as a spirit. It wasn't worshipped. It wasn't feared the way predators are feared. It was treated like weather. Something you respect, not challenge. The translation problem. When anthropologists first documented Wabanaki stories in the early 20th century, they misunderstood something critical. They assumed the stories were metaphorical, but elders corrected them. One elder, recorded in 1912, said, "You think it is a story because you believe stories come from imagination. This one comes from rules." The rules were simple. Do not stop in the deep pine. Do not repeat sounds you hear. Do not stand still when the forest goes quiet. And most importantly, if the forest waits for you, you have already stayed too long. The logging accident, 1949. The first official incident tied to Pine Ridge occurred in 1949 during a post-war logging expansion. A crew of 7 men entered the area to mark trees for removal. Only 6 returned. The missing man was Harold Finch, age 42, a veteran logger with over 20 years of experience. Search teams found his boots, placed neatly beside a tree. Not torn, not dragged, placed. What the crew said. The surviving loggers were interviewed separately. Every account matched. They said Harold stopped walking. Not suddenly. He just slowed down, then stood still. One man shouted his name. Harold raised his hand slightly, but didn't turn around. The forest, according to them, became too organized. Branches stopped moving. Birds stopped calling. Wind vanished. One logger said, "It felt like the woods were holding their breath." They dragged Harold by the arm. He didn't resist, but his body felt wrongly balanced, as if weight was being redistributed. They let go. Harold stepped forward once, and then he wasn't where he had been anymore. There was no sound, no crash, just space where he used to be. The Forestry Service file. The incident was logged as disorientation leading to exposure, but an internal note added by a ranger supervisor reads, "No tracks, no drag marks. Area feels unapproachable beyond marker point." That note was removed from the final report, but a copy still exists. The Mirror Incident, 1963. In 1963, a U.S. Geological Survey team conducted land imaging tests near Pine Ridge. They brought mirrors, large, reflective survey mirrors used to signal across distances. The goal was to test light refraction in dense forest. The test was abandoned within hours, because mirrors stopped behaving normally. According to the report, reflections lagged behind movement. Some angles showed no reflection at all. One mirror cracked spontaneously without impact. One technician wrote, "It feels like the forest refuses to see itself." That line was flagged and removed. The compass behavior. By the 1970s, rangers noticed something else. Compasses didn't spin randomly. They reacted to observation. When placed on the ground and left alone, they behaved normally. When watched closely, the needle drifted, not north, not south, toward open space between trees. One ranger tested this repeatedly. He wrote, "It's like the forest is a direction it prefers not to be noticed." Why photographs fail. Photographs taken near Pine Ridge show no anomalies, no figures, no shadows, no distortions. But video recording shows something subtle. Compression artifacts, frame drops, momentary warping. Always when the camera operator stops moving. Always when attention is focused. Analysts concluded, the anomaly does not register as an object. It registers as a disruption of continuity. In simpler terms, it doesn't appear. It interrupts. Caleb's connection revisited. When investigators reviewed Caleb Warden's case after uncovering older records, something disturbing emerged. Caleb had unknowingly followed the exact same survey path used in 1949. Same stopping point, same marsh clearing, same time of year. When shown a map of Harold Finch's disappearance, Caleb said, "That's where it leaned closer." He was never told anyone had vanished there. The sound people hear. Witnesses across decades describe a sound. Not a voice, not a growl, a pressure change, like air folding inward. Some describe it as a low internal hum, a vibration behind the eyes. The sense of being addressed without words. One phrase appears again and again in interviews. It didn't want me scared. It wanted me still. Why some people escape. Not everyone who encounters it disappears. Patterns suggest survival depends on one thing: motion without focus. Those who keep walking without analyzing survive. Those who stop to understand don't. An internal memo from 2009 states, curiosity correlates strongly with escalation. The unpublished conclusion. By 2011, Maine authorities quietly restricted access to Pine Ridge Access Road. No fences, no signs, just a lack of maintenance. Maps still show it, but paths fade faster than expected. Vegetation grows unnaturally dense, almost as if the land is correcting itself. The question no one answers: if the entity doesn't chase, if it doesn't kill violently, if it doesn't leave evidence, then what happens to those who vanish? One Wabanaki elder answered simply, they stop being separate from the standing. Part 3. The team that stopped moving the survey that should have been routine, 1987. In the summer of 1987, the U.S. Geological Survey approved a short-term environmental study near Pine Ridge Access Road. The purpose was simple: verify land stability for future conservation zoning. 4 people were assigned, not hikers, not amateurs, professionals. The team: Dr. Alan Whitmore, lead geologist, a Rachel Boone, cartographer, O. Samuel Ortiz, field technician, Tom Keene, radio operator. They entered the forest on July 12, 1987. They were expected out by July 15th. They were never seen walking back. The last transmission. At 4:19 p.m. on July 14th, Tom Keene radioed base. The transmission is still archived. There is no panic in his voice, no urgency. He says, "We've stopped for mapping. Something's wrong with distance." The operator asked him to clarify. Tom responded, "We're not lost. We just keep arriving at the same space." The transmission ends abruptly. No static, no interference, just silence. The search operation. Search teams enter the forest within 18 hours. They found the team's campsite, undisturbed, tents intact, supplies untouched, food still sealed. Maps were spread neatly on a rock. All 4 radios were present, but there were no footprints leaving the site. Tracking dogs refused to move past the clearing. One handler reported, "The dogs won't pull. They sit, like they are waiting for permission." What was found in the notebooks? Each team member carried a field notebook. All 4 were recovered. The handwriting was calm, orderly, but the content changed rapidly over time. Dr. Whitmore's notes. Tree density inconsistent with satellite imagery. Distances feel compressed. Movement does not change position as expected. Rachel Boone wrote, "Maps don't hold here. Lines keep drifting." Samuel Ortiz, "Standing still feels encouraged." That sentence was underlined twice. The page that ended the investigation. Tom Keene's notebook contained the final entry. It was written cleanly, carefully. "We stopped walking because it became unnecessary." There's no entry after that. The footprint problem. Investigators noticed something unsettling. There were footprints leading into the forest. Clear, defined, human, but none leading out. Not erased, not disturbed, simply absent, as if movement beyond that point never occurred. The breathing recording. Tom Keen's radio was still active. Its internal tape recorded 23 minutes after the last transmission. There were no voices, but analysts detected a sound. A rhythmic expansion and contraction. Not lungs, not mechanical. Something closer to pressure adjusting. One analyst described it as, like a space learning how to inhale. Why the case was sealed. The official explanation was environmental disorientation, but internal documents contradict this. A classified memo reads, "Subject appeared to have ceased locomotion voluntarily." That phrase appears twice. Voluntarily. The ranger who saw it off the record. A ranger involved in the search later spoke anonymously. He said the forest felt expectant. Not hostile, not aggressive, just attentive. He described seeing something once. Not a shape, a distortion, like the idea of a tree without the tree. He said, it wasn't blocking the path. It was becoming the path. The name issue. One detail emerged during review. Before the team disappeared, Rachel Boone had recorded audio notes. In one clip, she laughs nervously and says, "It feels like it knows our names." That clip ends abruptly. No one knows why she said that, but later cases suggest names matter. The pattern becomes clear. After 1987, authorities notice a trend. Encounters escalated when people stopped moving, focused attention, spoke aloud, and tried to understand. The entity didn't approach people. People aligned with it. Why it never appears in photos. Analysis concluded something critical. The entity does not occupy space. It occupies attention. Cameras record space, not awareness. That's why photos show nothing. But witnesses experience everything. The unsettling theory. One analyst proposed a theory that was never published. He wrote, "This environment may not contain an entity. It may function as one. Not a creature, a condition, a place where observation itself is answered." The final line from the file. At the end of the sealed report is a handwritten note. No author, no date, just a warning. If it notices you noticing it, stop noticing. Part 4. The Sky That Stopped Responding Federal Attention, 1991. By 1991, Pine Ridge Forest was no longer handled at the state level. Too many inconsistencies. Too many sealed ranger reports. Too many disappearances without physical evidence. The land was quietly reclassified under a federal environmental monitoring initiative. Officially, long-term ecological stability research. Unofficially, unresolved spatial anomaly. 3 agencies became involved. A U.S. Forest Service, restricted unit. NOAA environmental analysts. A Department of Defense research contractor listed only as Axiom North. No press releases were issued. The forest simply gained fences. The first drone incident. In May 1992, aerial drones were deployed. Not military-grade weapons, mapping units. High resolution, automated, GPS-linked. The plan was simple. Map the interior from above. The first drone crossed the forest boundary at 10:42 a.m. At 10:44 a.m., it stopped, not crashed, not malfunctioned. It hovered, perfectly still. Telemetry showed a full battery, active motors, no collision alerts. It just refused further commands. When engineers attempted to override controls, the drone began rotating slowly, as if searching. Then the feed cut. The drone was later recovered, undamaged, resting on the ground. Power still on. Camera lens pointed directly upward. The satellite anomaly. In 1994, NOAA analysts noticed something disturbing. Satellite images of Pine Ridge did not match over time. Not seasonal change. Not weather effects. The forest appeared to shift position by several meters, then return. Like a breath. But only when viewed over extended observation. Quick scan showed nothing wrong. Long observation did. One analyst wrote, The longer we watch, the less stable the image becomes. That sentence triggered an internal review. The eye effect. Axiom North coined the term. The observer feedback loop. Their hypothesis. The environment behaves differently when actively studied. Not when passed through. Not when ignored. Only when attention lingers. Sensors left unattended collected normal data. Sensors actively monitored began producing inconsistencies. Even automated systems showed anomalies if humans reviewed the data in real time. It wasn't surveillance that triggered change. It was awareness of surveillance. The second team, 1996. Despite warnings, a new team was approved. This time, no notebooks, or no verbal communication, no names spoken aloud. All communication was text only. They entered Pine Ridge on October 3rd, 1996. At first, everything was normal. Then a message came through the secure terminal. Distance decreasing without movement. Minutes later, standing feels correct. The last message was chilling in its neutrality. Remaining still reduces cognitive load. No further transmissions were received. Search teams found their equipment arranged neatly. Boots lined up. Tools cleaned. No signs of panic. No struggle. Just absence. The internal argument. At this point, officials split into two camps. Camp A, an unknown environmental phenomenon affecting perception. Camp B, something adaptive, responsive, aware. Camp B was never allowed to publish. The document that never left the room. In 1999, a senior analyst wrote a memo titled, Non-Biological Predatory Environments. His argument, some environments do not hunt bodies. They hunt behavior. He suggested Pine Ridge was not dangerous because it attacked, but because it rewarded compliance, stillness, attention, acceptance. The ranger who broke protocol. In 2004, Ranger Michael Holland was assigned perimeter duty. He was experienced, disciplined, by the book, until one night, during a routine patrol, his body cam recorded him stopping. No threat, no sound, just silence. After 47 seconds, he whispered, "It feels polite." He stood still for 6 minutes, then resumed walking. Later, during debriefing, Holland couldn't explain why he stopped, but he requested reassignment away from the forest. His request was granted immediately, no questions asked. The thing that doesn't chase. By the mid-2000s, a pattern was undeniable. The phenomenon never followed people, never pursued, never reached. People came to it, stopped for it, adjusted for it. The danger wasn't entering Pine Ridge. The danger was staying curious. The final policy change, 2009. A directive was issued. No prolonged observation, and no live monitoring, no curiosity-driven exploration. Pine Ridge became an asterisk pass-through only zone. No stopping, no studying, no mapping. The forest was labeled stable. The files were sealed. The last sentence in the file, written in red ink, whatever this is, it does not want us gone. It wants us aligned. The entity in the Pines Part 5, the man who didn't look away, the ranger who ignored the rules, 2019. In April 2019, a ranger named Elliot Merrill was assigned temporary duty at Pine Ridge. He was not new. He was not reckless. He was, however, curious in a way policy couldn't measure. Elliot had transferred from Alaska, where isolation was normal and silence wasn't threatening. Pine Ridge felt familiar, too familiar. He had read the old files. Most rangers didn't. They were told not to. Elliot read them anyway, and he noticed something no one had officially acknowledged. The forest didn't harm people who passed through. It only changed those who paid attention. The unofficial recordings, body cams were restricted in Pine Ridge. Elliot wore one anyway. He told supervisors it was for personal accountability. What he really wanted was proof, not for others, but for himself. On May 11th, 2019, his camera recorded the first anomaly. He stopped walking. No sound prompted it. No visual cue. He simply stopped. Afterward, reviewing the footage, Elliot said, "It felt rude to keep going." The stillness response. Over the next 2 weeks, Elliot documented something subtle. Whenever he paused, intentionally or not, the environment responded. Not dramatically. No movement. No noise. Instead, effort decreased. Breathing felt easier. Muscles relaxed. Thoughts slowed, as if the forest rewarded stillness. He wrote in his private journal, "It's not pulling you in. It's making leaving feel unnecessary." The night that broke procedure. On June 2nd, 2019, Elliot stayed past his shift. No authorization. No backup. His body cam recorded everything. At 9:14 p.m., the audio captured him whispering, "It's doing it again." Camera footage showed nothing unusual. Trees. Darkness. Fog. At 9:18, Elliot sat down. Not collapsed. Not exhausted. Saturday. He remained seated for 13 minutes. Then he spoke again. "I think it knows when you're pretending not to notice." That sentence triggered internal alarms when the footage was later reviewed. The shape that wasn't a shape. At 9:29 p.m., the camera glitched. Not static. Not distortion. The image simply refused to stabilize. Frames showed the forest reorganizing itself, not physically, but spatially. Depth collapsed. Distance stopped meaning anything. Elliot didn't react. He only said, "You don't need a body if you can adjust rules." The last transmission. At 9:41 p.m., Elliot stood up. Slowly, calmly, he faced deeper into the forest. The final clear audio captured. "I understand now. You don't hunt us. You wait for us to agree." Then the camera feed cut. The search. A response team entered Pine Ridge at dawn. They found Elliot's gear neatly placed at the edge of his patrol zone. Boots aligned. Radio powered off. Body cam still warm. No footprints leading away. No signs of struggle. His journal was recovered. The final entry read, "It doesn't want belief. It wants synchronization." The footage that never went public. Only 6 people were allowed to view the final body cam segment. All 6 requested reassignment within a month. 1 resigned completely. Another developed severe insomnia. A third stopped speaking about Pine Ridge entirely and refused to acknowledge its existence. The updated classification. After Elliot's disappearance, Pine Ridge classification changed again. Not to dangerous, to something worse. Passive adaptive environmental entity. Meaning, it doesn't attack. It doesn't pursue. It doesn't threaten. It waits. The last warning added to the file. The final line added to the Pine Ridge case file reads, "Do not remain. Do not observe. And above all, do not try to understand why staying feels right." Final part. What still waits a satellite anomaly, 2022. Pine Ridge Forest did not officially exist on federal maps after 2019. But satellites don't care about paperwork. In March 2022, a routine atmospheric survey conducted by a NOAA-linked contractor flagged an irregularity over a section of northern forest in the United States. Not heat, not radiation, not movement, absence. A circular region, approximately 1.8 miles wide, where signal noise behaved differently. Infrared readings flattened. Ambient electromagnetic fluctuation dropped. Timestamp star positioning drifted by milliseconds. Insignificant to civilians. Unacceptable to analysts. The coordinates aligned with a location no longer labeled. But still there, Pine Ridge. While the case was reopened, quietly, no boots on the ground were sent. No drones. No observers. Instead, analysts reviewed historical data only. What they found forced a conclusion officials had avoided for decades. Every documented disappearance shared one condition. The individuals stopped resisting first. They didn't run. They didn't panic. They didn't fight. They adapted. And once adaptation occurred, recovery never did. The internal name. Within classified briefings, the phenomenon is no longer called an entity. It is referred to as a passive assimilative environment. In simpler terms, a place that does not attack, but rewards surrender. Not emotionally, not physically, cognitively. Why it was never destroyed. Multiple proposals were drafted. Controlled burn, chemical flooding, structural disruption. All were rejected for the same reason. Modeling showed escalation. The forest did not respond violently to intrusion. It responded defensively. The more aggressively it was disturbed, the more unpredictable its influence became. The safest option wasn't destruction. It was non-engagement. The final rule set, current. As of 2023, Pine Ridge exists under a silent policy known only to select agencies. No prolonged observation. No curiosity-driven access. No patent testing. No naming. And most importantly, do not describe a phenomenon in ways that encourage focus. Focus strengthens synchronization. Synchronization precedes permanence. What happened to Ethan Rowe? Rowe is not listed as deceased. He is classified as environmentally integrated. That classification exists nowhere else. No remains were found. No evidence of harm. Just absence. And silence. The last data point. In late 2023, the satellite anomaly shifted. Not expanded. Shifted. By 12 meters. Slow. Deliberate. Directional. The forest did not grow. Its center moved. The unanswered question. Analysts debated one final issue. If Pine Ridge does not hunt, if it does not spread, if it does not call attention to itself, then why does it allow discovery at all? The answer, written in an internal memo, was brief. Because awareness is not recruitment. Acceptance is. The final warning. Pine Ridge does not want believers. It wants participants. People who stop asking, is this dangerous? And start thinking, this feels right. Why you will never see the story confirmed. No deaths, no bodies, no crime scenes, just people who stop leaving, and places that don't like being noticed. The last line in the file, stamp close. If you ever feel a place growing quieter the longer you stay, leave while silence still feels uncomfortable.